So now we're going to have a look at some more advanced uses for EQ and logic. So I'll just bypass that linear phase EQ from the last video. And I'm going to come across to the match EQ. Now this allows us to apply a kind of frequency spectrum curve from a reference track onto our current track. Now that can be great if you're struggling to get your track kind of up to commercial standards within the genre that you're working. You could choose a reference track and you could apply the curve of that reference track to your track, which will allow you to hopefully get it closer. It's also a really, really good learning tool as well, because if you kind of do that with a few different reference tracks and you realize that you're light in the bass or you're kind of too bright in the tops, then it can mean that you can kind of go back and address those problems and also hopefully not create the same problems in the future. So let's have a look at how we can do that. So we've got our track from the last video, but we've also got another track actually from the same band, which is loaded on another track here. Okay, so what we're first going to do is learn the frequency spectrum of our track. So I'm going to go to the busiest part of the track, this kind of last chorus. Let's have a listen. Okay, sounds good. So I'm going to click learn, press play. So it seems to have settled on the frequency spectrum of our track. Now I'm going to choose an equivalent section in the reference track. Now you can actually drag the track onto the plugin, so you could drag the reference track on, but I like to actually make sure that it's referencing a similar section in the reference track. So let's just have a listen to the reference. Okay, sounds good. So I'll come to audio and load this into the sidechain slot. Click learn, and we're going to now be learning the reference track's frequency spectrum. Okay, and it seems to have settled on a curve there. So now let's click match here. And now we've got the EQ curve from the reference track applied to our track. So let's just mute this and go back to the pre-master we're working with. Let's go back to this section here. Now we've got 100% application here, and you can hear it's really taming the tops and loading in a load of warmth here, which kind of figures really, because you remember in the last video that's what I was trying to do. So let's just dial this back a little bit. So I feel like that's done quite a nice job again of just rounding off some of those maybe slightly harsh highs and adding in a bit of warmth there. Now this is another track from the same band, and if this was a mix and master that you were super happy with, then that would make sense. But we could also use, of course, tracks from the top commercial artists within that genre and compare those, which might be even more valuable than comparing the band to themselves. Okay, so that's something we can do. Now, bear in mind that the phase options here allow us to go for linear phase, and that's why this is definitely something which can be applied within the mastering process. Okay, so let's have a look at some other more advanced uses of EQ in mastering. Okay, so now we've got another scenario, and I've kind of artificially generated this, but it is a problem I face a lot as a mastering engineer, is tracks are a little bit lifeless in the kind of stereo image, not quite wide enough, not quite bright enough. And I've created that situation with this track here, so let's have a listen. So it still has the brightness in there, but it's a little bit too kind of based around the middle. It's not wide enough, essentially. So what I'm going to do is bring in the linear phase EQ, but this time I'm going to set the processing to be the side only. Now I know, because I've created this problem, that there's a bit of a dip in the side frequencies in the kind of upper area here. So I'm going to try and rectify that by only affecting the side bands. So doing quite a big increase on the EQ, but as I said, only on the side frequencies. So first of all, let's set our kind of range. I'm going to put it up to about 6K, around there, that's fine. And then let's create quite a big boost to start with, and then we'll kind of dial it in and out and see where we can push it. So I'm going to make this very wide because I feel like it's kind of across the upper range that it's a little bit lacking. So let's play this and see how it sounds.
So good, and we're loving right. Put your hands up if you're feeling fly. So good, and the feeling's right. Oh, you wanna be yourself tonight. So good, so good, so good, so good, so good. Only wanna be myself tonight. So good, and we're loving right. Put your hands up if you're feeling fly. So good, and the feeling's right.
So you can hear how that really opens up when we bring the EQ in. And without it, it's very flat sounding in that upper range.
So good, and we're loving right. Put your hands up if you're feeling fly. So good, and the feeling's right. Oh, you wanna be yourself tonight. So good,
Now if I was to make this the stereo mix rather than the sides,
so good.
it becomes unlistenable because it's just way over the top and way too bright. But we can be much more heavy-handed with the EQ curve if we're only affecting the sideband frequencies, because obviously that's the frequencies that push out to the side. And also I've created this problem and I've been quite heavy-handed with the cut I made in the sides. But this isn't a scenario that I get faced with a lot of the time, which is tracks, as I said, that aren't wide enough, aren't kind of hyped up enough in the higher frequencies. And that's how you can solve it. Okay, so let's have a look at an alternative problem here, which is when we have a problem with the left-right balance. And you can actually see on the audio file here, the left channel is much louder than the right channel. And if we play it,
And the feeling's right. Only wanna
you can hear that the left channel is louder than the right channel. Now again, this is a problem I've kind of artificially created because we've already heard this track and it didn't have this left-right balance problem when we first listened to it. So I've kind of engineered this to be a problem, but this is something you do see. And it might be something which you come across in a mix context. Maybe if you have a loop which you're using in your track and it's out of balance on the left and the right hand side, often it can actually be a frequency band which is out of balance in one of the two channels. And we can fix this using EQ again, linear phase because we're mastering. But this time what we're going to do is work on the left hand side only because that's where we have this big boost in signal. Now it seems like the problem is the kind of low mid area. So what I'm going to do is just focus it around there, and I'm going to create a dip now. But as I said, we're only dipping now the left hand channel.
be myself tonight. So good, and we're loving life. Put your hands up if you're feeling fly. So good, and the feeling's right. Only wanna be myself tonight.
The magazines are loaded with many images, trying to make us forget about the image we're given, but I don't fit in. My image isn't thrilling. I figured the figure they flicker really is fiction. I don't.
So you can hear the difference there. It's taking that kind of strange stereo image that's created by having that boost in the left hand channel, and it's balancing it out. And you can see on our channel here that the volumes are now kind of matching better.
Don't mimic what I see on television. It's a gimmick. I don't get it, so I'm running from that vision. I'm one in a million, a limited edition. So why be someone else when I can be myself?
So we can do that for the left channel, just the right channel, and as we know from the previous example, we can do it for the middle and the side only. So really powerful ways of manipulating the stereo image in terms of the frequency spectrum using linear phase EQ. Okay, so to recap in this video, we've used the match EQ. Remember, we analysed our pre-master and then analysed the reference track through the sidechain, and then we actually applied the kind of frequency curve of the reference onto our track. We then used the EQ, linear phase EQ, in side-only mode to boost the high frequencies on an example I'd created where there was a little bit of a kind of mono problem in the high frequencies. And then finally, for this example, we created a dip in the left-hand channel to compensate for a boost that I'd created in just the left-hand channel, which is something you do come across. And actually, conversely, if you listen to this, especially listen to it in headphones, it actually gives the track a kind of cool stereo image in a way, especially in headphones. But it's a terrible idea to do this on a master because obviously if you were listening to this in a kind of sound system environment, then the left channel would be really loud, the left speaker would be loud, the right speaker would be quieter, the frequencies would be out of balance. So it's a terrible idea. But in a mixed context, this is the way you can create some really cool stereo image, because by creating boosts and cuts that are different in the left and the right hand channel, you kind of get that enhanced stereo image because obviously the difference between the two channels is really evident. So it's just something to bear in mind if you're trying to widen something in a mixed context. You can actually do the reverse of what we've done here, because in this example we're compensating for a problem, whereas actually you could apply this same principle creatively to create enhanced stereo image. So I hope you found that video useful. In the next video we're going to have a look at some of our saturation options in Logic.